Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Amber and this is Fundy Freed. If you're new here, welcome to my channel, and if you're returning, thank you so much for watching. I'm so glad you're here. Today we will be talking about part 4 of my story, which brings you all the way up to the current date where I'm sitting right now, and will kind of give you the last bit of what brought my journey to this point. In the next month, I will talk about actually very specifically my spiritual testimony, but I felt it was important to lay the groundwork of my life story so you kind of understood the background of things going on while I started deconstructing. Before we get started today, do not forget to like the video, subscribe, show that engagement, let YouTube know that you like what I'm doing. I'm also doing the 500, I do it every time, 500 subscriber challenge, that if I hit 500, I will do the hot sauce challenge or the hot spicy thing challenge while I'm doing Bible trivia and things like that, where you will see me cry from pain on YouTube. So hopefully that will be something that you guys enjoy. Now that we're through the introduction, let's get into today's video. Okay, like I said before, today is part 4 of my 4-part series about my story, so you guys get an idea and a background of who I am and where I come from. And today we'll be starting in the year of 2020 and go to the present, so cover the last 3 years. Okay. So starting in 2020, I was terribly sick at the beginning of 2020, and honestly, looking back now, symptoms and the quick onset, I really do think I actually had COVID. But 2020 looked to be a pretty normal year. I had set a lot of good intentions for myself that year, and I and my husband, we were like gonna start working on this weight loss journey, like continuous together. And so really, like, the first part of the year was pretty uneventful, and then suddenly we started getting news that a virus had been spreading across China into Europe and has now been in the US, and all of a sudden the government shut us down for 2 weeks, and of course it was supposed to be just 2 weeks, and of course we all know that COVID lasted much longer than that. The best way I can explain 2020, it was just a flat-out dumpster fire. I know that I'm not the only person who experienced that, but 2020 was the year that completely stripped me of absolutely everything that I was. There are things that happened that my husband and I are not comfortable sharing at this time, but we did end in a short separation towards the end of 2020. And honestly, a lot of it was compiled up from years of, even though I'd been going to therapy, there was a lot of unaddressed trauma. I just started having memories really start coming back to me in nightmares and things such as that, of the abuse I endured as a kid. We were just so disconnected that we made the decision to separate for a short time. We did get back together and make the decision to work things out. But it was in this process of completely wiping away every bit of my identity, especially as people found, certain people found out the situation that had happened. That for the first time in my life, I could no longer hide behind a performative pretense. Every bit of myself felt exposed and bare, and I knew that I was either going to be done with living or I was going to have to rebuild myself. And I decided at that point that I was going to rebuild myself piece by piece, just the parts of myself that I needed. So all these years prior, I had been slowly deconstructing in my belief, but it's like 2020 really put the pedal to the metal and pushed the gas pedal down. We went from 0 to 200 almost overnight. At this point, I started working at a local plus size women's shop. It was getting out of the house a lot more. Obviously, theater was shut down. I had a friend that I had known for a really long time, 15 years, 20 years, somewhere in there. I worked with him before I was even married, and he had run for governor. He was in the Libertarian Party. I really liked this guy. We had a really good, chemistry whenever we were together. And so he put out that he was making a second movie with a bunch of his friends. And I did some research and realized he had made a movie about the legend of Spearfinger in the fall of 2020 with just a handful of people, and it was starting to garner a bunch of awards, getting some recognition. So just on a whim, I messaged him and I was like, hey, do you want a Kirby Girl extra for your movie? Because at this point I had filmed a kids TV series, I had done reenactment, I had done the musical theater stuff, and I really wanted to start branching off, and I had done some modeling work. And so I was like, listen, I would love to do this. So he's like, yeah, come on, we're filming this night in this location, show up and make a name for your character. And I was like, okay. He's like, something funny, kind of on the nose. And I was like, okay, I will be Sister Mary Chastity. And I would have loved my character name. So the premise of the movie was it was based in 1999 during the Y2K bug. And if any of you remember who are old enough, and those of you who are not old enough, Y2K was whenever 1999 was switching over to 2000, and it was like this big thing, especially in fundy circles, that the world was going to end, or computers were going to take over the world, everything was going to shut down, the New World Order was going to start happening in 2000. So there was massive amounts of hoarding food, getting ready, Jesus is coming back, all of these things, including my own family. We had so many beanie weenies, it's not even funny. I thought it was great because this movie was kind of starting to play on the stigmas and the ridiculousness of fundamental and legalistic beliefs and how they affect people, and what if Y2K actually happened and actually Jesus came back. And well, it sounds like a Christian movie, it really isn't. It's actually a horror comedy movie. So I go in and I see him, I'm like, hey, it's great to see you. I was actually wearing this shirt. So I go in, I do my part, I do recording, I record my song because I was doing some stuff for the score. And then I'm like, hey, do you need an extra next weekend? Yeah, that'd be great. Come on out. So my 2 weekends as an extra slash having a bit of a scene in the movie turned into, hey, do you need some help with set continuity? So I became, along with one other lady, like we did set continuity. So we set up everything and put everything down in the room so we could, and it was like exactly as it should be for each time we needed to film in there. I was able to start doing cinematography, videography, and as this snowballed, it became this massive opportunity to be a part of a production crew and a part of getting to be behind the scenes in making a movie, not only being part of in front of the camera, but doing things behind the camera. From there, they started writing their third movie, which is Camp Smokey. And they invited me to go along and film with them during some of the episodes of their paranormal TV show called Wrestling with Ghosts. And let me tell you, that was the most phenomenal experience. It was crazy. We drove all night, we recorded all night, we videoed like three episodes, I think, in one night, and drove all the way back. I was dead. And the stuff that we experienced was pretty intense. It kind of solidified my part and my place, because I went from being just a small part of a movie to then I was doing makeup, I was doing hair, I was helping doing costuming, doing all these things. And that was like a massive boost in confidence. And so this was me starting to really come into my own and be who I wanted to be for myself. Around the end of 2021 is whenever we premiered WJHC AM, which is the movie. And it's now streaming on multiple streaming services. I got the opportunity to work in a short film, and I got to play an evil character, which was a lot of fun. It's called Logan's Chapel. You can find that on YouTube as well. I had the opportunity to start up a business with a very renowned, very wonderful violinist. And we created a wedding business to play for weddings. And so it was like overnight from the second April of 2021 hit, my life became a roller coaster. And I went from 0 to 200 of not only rebuilding myself into who I truly am. And honestly, it's been the most liberating thing. Built our wedding business, and through that I built up a lot of my musical skill, which got me into teaching music, building things for myself that I never thought possible. And in this time is whenever I had a massive shift in my belief system, because I really started questioning a lot of things that was being done and said in the church that we were in at the time, realizing that I no longer identified or even believed, and I don't even know when it really changed. I did not believe anymore of what we were doing in this church, and I did not agree with the messages that were coming out from the church that were bigoted and hate-filled. I did not like the way the LGBTQ plus community was looked at. I did not like how race was looked at. There was just a lot of things that went into this. Looking at my children, I was like, okay, what kind of example do I want to set for them? And then it was waiting for my husband to become comfortable enough to be able to say the same thing for himself. Backtrack a little bit. So in spring of 2021, I was still in the middle of recording, and then I started getting really big cravings for hot dogs. And normally the cravings for hot dogs come only whenever I am expecting a baby. So took a test and found out I was pregnant, and went in and found out that it was a non-viable pregnancy. And so I lost that pregnancy the summer of 21. And about 3 weeks after that, at my place of business, I was sexually assaulted during the day at my job, and thankfully the guy was caught. I was able to press charges, but in the midst of all of that trauma, like, a lot of the things that was still very much ingrained in my head started coming back and popping up. I've talked about this before in the purity culture video, about how after the assault, I was told in my brain, or I was telling myself in my brain, you know, if you had never done this, if you had never gone out and worked, if you had been wearing pants or shorts or whatever it was I was wearing, this would not have happened. Which in reality, it doesn't matter what I'm wearing. A predator is going to be a predator no matter what. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with me being in a job outside the home. The trip to South Carolina to film 3 episodes of Wrestling with Ghost was actually the first trip I'd been on after the assault, and it was with all men except for one. And it was actually a pretty healing journey, healing trip, because nobody knew except for one what had happened. And just being around a bunch of guys, and a good portion of the time alone in the dark looking for paranormal things, you learn that not all men are predators. Especially as a trauma victim, it's very important, I think, for us to realize that there's safe spaces for us. And being able to do that and be around everyone really kind of helped boost my healing. It was in this time too that more racially driven things, derogatory things, were being pushed from the church that we were in, including other things that were being teached as gospel, such as like the flat earth theory. There's just a lot of things that was happening, and I was realizing very quickly that I did not want to be in that anymore, but I just could not consciously bring myself to admit to myself that I was no longer an independent fundamental Baptist person. Our movie premiered on December 29th of 2021. And it turned out great. Ended up on a bunch of streaming services. Like I said, we're on movie number 3. We're in pre-production for movie number 4. The whole trajectory of my life totally is just so different now than what I ever would have expected it to be. It was 2022, probably the biggest shifting year I had, because my husband decided that he was really starting to deconstruct himself, because he had always been just a little bit behind with everything. He started noticing things at the church as well. And we made the decision that I was going to fulfill my commitments, and then we would just leave quietly, because we know in this environment that it doesn't matter what you say or what reason you give or what you do, you're always going to end up being the bad guy. And so we didn't want to be branded as the people who were talking bad about this particular. We didn't want to be branded as we were talking bad or trying to start things. We just knew it was our time to be done. Decision came to us around the time of Thanksgiving or so of 2022, and we made the decision to take time off if we needed to, and just kind of see where we were and evaluate where we were. In the midst of all of this, while we are realizing this is the decision that we need to make, and like grieving the decision that we're making, I started teaching at a private school, music. And we had sent our youngest daughter to the private school because she just needed a different structure and a different environment to be able to thrive, and she was doing great there. And so things started working out where I was getting more involved, and the school is attached to a church, and the people there were unlike anybody we'd ever really been around before. And I was determined that this time I was not going to hide any part of who I was, because I was tired of hiding. I was tired of hiding my beliefs, what I didn't believe in, what I thought, how I wanted to be, how I was, equal in my marriage with my husband. There was just so many things that my husband and I were tired of just not being seen as who we are and not being accepted by who we are, because we never fit in anywhere. We never really fit into any churches because we were too liberal or too free to fit in really with the IFB, but we never felt comfortable enough to go to more of a more modern church just because of where we were in our deconstruction at that point. It was around the time that we made the decision that I started thinking, you know what, I really wish I had access to someone or content to follow or to listen to where the person was still a Christian at the end, because most of the content creators I follow were in the faith, and then they were no longer in the faith. And I hold no judgment for people who make those decisions, because honestly, I can totally understand why people leave. The pain and the trauma can be very much that it's just easier is not really even the word. It's just, that's the final conclusion that you come to because that's the safest for you. I started looking around and I found a few, but I had this burning desire to be able to share my own story and do something, try to create something that would be better than what I could do. I was like, what if I start a YouTube channel? What if I build a social media platform about deconstruction, but with the angle of still having faith? That is how it brought me to this point. I started building content in all of December, while we were finishing out my obligations at the church. And I made the decision that I wanted to be able to share people's stories. That was my primary purpose, was to be able to share people's stories. And to also then just talk about and debunk things that we were taught that were just blatantly untrue. This video is short and sweet, and kind of just wanted to wrap everything up to bring you up to the point that we are now. I'll talk next month more about the actual deconstruction part of like the whole thing, just like more of the broad spectrum of the deconstruction journey that I went on. Now that the groundwork has been laid with my story. If you have your own story that you would like to share, you can follow the directions in the description box below. If you have memes or videos you'd like for me to react to for an upcoming react video, you can send that to me in the same place as well. Don't forget about the 500 challenge where I can eat the hot things and cry on camera for you while answering Bible trivia. Don't forget to like the video, share, and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment below if you'd like to. And until next time, my friends, everyone has a story. What's yours?